I got a new MacBook yesterday.
Just you had to say it, didn't you?
I had to. Come on, it's right here.
Okay,
right?
can we? Is it shiny? Can we see it? I mean, are you
it
allowed
is.
to?
Let me see here.
No
stickers on it.
No stickers on it.
It's
My
brand
God,
new.
man.
In the beginning, when they released OneDrive, it was still a bit difficult to work with your personal files.
I think it's getting more stripped away a little bit from the user perspective, but on the infrastructure side, we need more and more.
The local government here doesn't supply business phones to everyone. So you have to pay for your own device. They'll basically own the management of it. And then they come back to their employees and says, well, you're not allowed to have, for instance, TikTok installed. And the employee says, well, it's my phone. Well, not really, because we manage it.
Nah, it's way more easy. And I think COVID pandemic also helped in this situation, because suddenly all users needed to work at home. For instance, if certain devices are not compliant, not able to actually reach the Microsoft 365 data, then still you need an engineer to check the device and make sure that it is compliant again.
Does this sound like more of a security flinched reaction, though? Why there's not the same level of concern over Facebook, WhatsApp, and all the other various other ones? I'm not quite sure.
It was several years ago. It's basically exactly the same thing.
Okay, hello and welcome along to this podcast. Today we are lucky enough to be joined by colleague Kevin Janssen. Hello, Kevin. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, for sure.
And so what is it you do? What's your expertise? Where do you spend most of your time?
Well, most of my time I spent on the Microsoft things around the cloud. So I have a lot of knowledge around the Microsoft 365 environments, a lot of knowledge around Azure, a lot of knowledge around SharePoint and that kind of things. So I'm quite familiar with the Microsoft stack.
Wow. Okay. Cool. So all cloud on that basis, but cloud and workspace as well. And I suppose this, and let's use this as our sort of entry to the episode. Okay, modern workspace, cloud workspace, virtual workspace, just generic word workspace. What are these things? I mean, there's a lot of FUD about it, or a lot of information on the internet, but from a business perspective, what do you see as the differences between these things?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think there are a lot of modern workspace available at the moment. You can think of Citrix Cloud is also a modern workspace, of course, but you can think of the Microsoft 365 as a modern workspace, or AVD, Azure Virtual Desktop, as a modern workspace. So I think when somebody's talking about a modern workspace, they are thinking about a cloud workspace rather than a on-premise workspace. So to my opinion, that's what a modern workspace is.
But does that mean like the use of Office 365 is a modern workspace in the same way that running a Citrix virtual desktop, which to me, from a technology perspective, are very different things, are essentially both the same terminology?
Yeah, it can be. Yeah. It's I think it depends on the market, on the customers, exactly what they think is a modern workspace, because I think we see a lot of customers which are moving to Microsoft 365, but still have some legacy applications, for instance, that they somehow need to be able to push on a modern workspace. And then we see that still Azure Virtual Desktop is being used, or Citrix Cloud is being used. And I think everything together is a modern workspace that it is modernly managed from the cloud, for instance. Yeah.
And I think that's a very good point. That is managed. I think that is very important for a modern workspace, workplace, however you want to call it, because oftentimes, at least that's what I experienced, when you come into environments that did not really start with the journey, there is often lack of management for endpoints, applications, and even security for many parts. And I think that's a very important part that you said. It has to be managed somehow. People have to understand what is used, how it is managed. How do you approach that? You said cloud first would be your preferred way to do that. How do your customers react on that?
Yeah, I think most of our customers are actually trying to move to the cloud from the workspace side of things. Because Microsoft is pushing also on the Microsoft 365 licenses, for instance, and it makes sense to have a modern workspace in Microsoft 365 because it's quite easy to maintain. So all the devices are managed via Intune. It's one of the products in the cloud, And now the idea is that you go to a shop, to an electronic shop, just buy a laptop, and you are good to go when you have pushed it into Intune. And then from Intune, all the applications are pushed, all the policies are pushed, all the security policies are pushed, and everything is maintained from Intune. So that's quite easy to manage and quite modern to manage compared to, for instance, SSGM or that kind of tools, which are quite old, of course.
So we're moving away from the idea whereby, I mean, previously what would happen from a corporate perspective is the corporation would buy your laptop. They would have a specific selection of images that they would apply to that laptop. They would be very guarded about how they patch that laptop and everything else on those lines. But what we're really saying is that you can go and take any machine you like, plug it into Intune, and Intune will then essentially allow your corporation to define what level of protection that machine has.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It does it all at their end rather than, so.
Yeah, exactly. So then the workspace policies are pushed. For instance, that BitLocker is activated on your laptop, that some security features are activated. And now it will also push the applications because the applications will be packaged into Intune. And then depending on the user you are, in which groups you are, you get the correct application pushed to your laptop. And then everything is maintained via Intune.
Well, and is that just the desktop side of things, or is that the Office 365 side of things as well?
Now, at first, so at first the desktop side of things, that everything is pushed on your laptop. For instance, if somebody loses their device, then via Intune you could say, okay, this laptop is lost or it is stolen or whatever, and you could just block it. Then the device is not compatible anymore, and then you're not able to open up the laptop and that kind of things. So at first it is most of the laptop side of things. But of course, what we see at our customer side is that they want to move their data as well into Microsoft 365. Of course, the first logical thing to do is move your mail to Exchange Online. But of course, we also see a lot of customers which want to move their network shares and that kind of things to SharePoint or to Microsoft Teams. So I think it's two sides of things, the laptop, but also, of course, the data.
And this also applies to non-Windows machines as well, right? So just to rub it in for the other guys here, I got a new MacBook yesterday.
You had to say it, didn't you?
Yeah, I had to. Come on, it's right here.
Okay,
right?
can we? Is it shiny? Can we see it? I mean, are you
it
allowed
is.
to?
Let me see here.
No
stickers on it.
No stickers on it. My God,
new.
man, that's not like you.
That'll probably change pretty quickly, but I don't get stickers pushed to it via Intune.
Okay, no, that's definitely worth a go.
But I did get a lot of other stuff pushed to it via Intune inside of the ProAct environment, right? So I enrolled my MacBook yesterday. That's why I mentioned it, because I enrolled it in with my own user account into Intune, and that got the our policies applied to it, be it antivirus things we have, and got software installed, Microsoft Office and Teams and all of that thing. So it also applies for non-Windows machines as well. You can manage those in this kind of environment.
Exactly.
And it's I guess I haven't worked with this in a few years, but I mean, System Center Configuration Manager was an interesting thing to work with back in the day. So I'm guessing Intune is a pretty good upgrade for that.
Are you being ironic, Chris?
It's okay. Sometimes Intune is still a bit difficult and hard to maintain. And that's mostly when you apply something in Intune, then it needs to be pushed to all the devices. But then, each device should be connected to the internet. And depending on how busy it is at Microsoft, you see that sometimes the Intune changes are not applied that quickly on all the devices. So that's one of the downsides of Intune, and that's something which customers are struggling with as well.
Yeah. But on the other hand, you don't have to maintain the VPN connection to your SCCM. Okay, you could have a cloud management gateway there also, but there was also some cloud magic in it, and then you had to switch between on-prem and on the road. And so, I think in the end, it's really helping for the 95% of use cases. And I think there will always be that kind of special cases, like very, very large and complicated installations of software or something where you have to figure out a way how to do that. But I think one also very important part, and Kevin, this is also something where I'd like to see your experience with, the change to OneDrive from file servers is one of the most important things speeding up the transition to a modern and more modern workplace. How do you see that?
Yeah, I think so as well. I think in the beginning when they released OneDrive, it was still a bit difficult to work with your personal files, because you have OneDrive where all your personal files are stored, and then on your laptop there is the OneDrive for Business Sync, and the OneDrive for Business Sync makes sure that when you're offline you can still work with your personal documents. And that too, that OneDrive for Business Sync, that's working quite well at the moment. So that's one of the biggest things where most of our customers start with, because it's quite easy to use. You could synchronize your desktop, your downloads folder, your documents folder, and that kind of things automatically into OneDrive, and it's quite easy to use it like that. So that's most of our cases the starting point where we learn our customers work with Microsoft 365.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think at the end of the day, certainly it's almost changed the way that we share information as well.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Certainly internally and with our customers, is the fact that we link to existing documents rather than sending massive great documents on email on a regular basis.
You're right. Because when I send a document, I never send an attachments. Only, for instance, to a customer, it makes sense to send a real PDF version or whatever of the document. But internally, we always work via OneDrive or via SharePoint, and just send the link to the specific document, and you could collaborate in that document, and you don't have many copies of the same document being somewhere in the company.
Agreed. But it must be, I think OneDrive has made a huge difference. Again, it's to a certain extent, obviously, we're a big NetApp partner, but we still sell an awful lot of NetApp storage arrays. So it's almost like file serving didn't go away. It's just the fact that maybe from users' perspective, it's maybe handled in a slightly different way with OneDrive. Is that the case, do we think?
Yeah, I think it's getting more stripped away a little bit from the user perspective, but on the infrastructure side, we need more and more. We talked about it for all the AI use cases. We collect more and more data in infrastructure in our applications and so on. So I think it's maybe shifting a little bit from what is stored on the NetApp storages, but we still need them obviously, and we have some speeds there that are not viable via cloud-only approaches. So
yeah, and also what we see is that customers still have a lot of legacy applications. And for instance, an application need to write some data to a specific file location, and then in most of those cases, SharePoint or OneDrive is not sufficient enough for those applications, and then we still see that the customer needs network shares.
Yeah, exactly. The end of the day, from a programming perspective, writing to a volume on a drive mapping or something else on those lines that we know is consistent is easy, but writing to a URL is a different thing altogether.
Exactly.
And that's how you address OneDrive and SharePoint. So yeah, no, I completely agree. I've had the same problem.
Speaking on the legacy applications, how do you approach, especially for, let's say, temporary workers or something like some people like that? How do you approach that in your projects? You can't install some legacy applications. They might depend on some file share or whatever. Are you using AVD or Windows 365 for such cases?
Yeah, exactly. So that's when we are using quite often Azure Virtual Desktop, because it's still quite good tooling for legacy applications for employees which are not working on their device any day or each day. So that's when we are using Azure Virtual Desktop to have published applications or fully desktop on Azure Virtual Desktop. It depends, of course, on the use case of the customers.
And that can also help with the BYOD scenario, right? How is your experience with all the bring your own device, or as others call us, bring your own disaster?
I was just about to say.
I learned that from you, Christian. So what do you see with your customers? How are they going with employee-owned devices? Are they allowing? Which techniques can you use?
Yeah, so we see that, of course, quite often, the bring your own device scenario. So then we make sure that those users can still access Microsoft 365 content. It can be done by www.office.com, and you could log into the Microsoft 365 environment via each browser. It can be a Chrome browser or Firefox. That doesn't matter that much. And you could just access your Microsoft 365 data, so your email and those kind of things. But of course, an application is still difficult to reach via the browser. If it is a SaaS application, of course, it's no problem. But still, organizations are still relying on legacy applications, and that's when we are using Azure Virtual Desktop. So then a user goes, for instance, to a SharePoint page, just press on a tile, and then the Azure Virtual Desktop will open up. And then, you could still push the legacy application to your user, but then in a virtualized environment like Azure Virtual Desktop.
And BYOD for mobile devices, yay or nay? What's your opinion?
So with mobile device, you have two scenarios, or you could do mobile device management, then you manage the whole device, or you could use a MAM, it's a mobile application management, and then you're just managing the bubble of the organization on your mobile device. So that's what we normally do with bring your own devices, that we then not manage the whole device, but only the data on the device. So we make sure that the email data, Teams data, that kind of things is stored on the device, but managed by Proact. So that's normally what we then see with bring your own devices.
So that frees up you basically as a service provider then from unwillingly deleting personal information when wiping a device or something like that, right? I think that is something to really consider for everyone who's doing MDM. As soon as you have admin power for your devices, you're responsible if the kiddos' birthday pictures are lost forever. So I like that approach, going for the company data in the applications and not 100% for the device.
Exactly. That's what we normally do as well. Most of our customers choose for that scenario. Of course, if they really want to own the device and just say, okay, we want to manage everything on the device, then we see that mobile device management is applied. But then it is just a business phone and not mixed with personal use.
Exactly.
That's been a pretty strong discussion here in Norway. Actually, I ended up writing an article about it in some Norwegian newspapers, basically because the local government here doesn't supply business phones to everyone, but at the same time they expect their employees to check their schedules in Teams or whatever system they have in place. So they kind of, you have to bring your own device, but they'll enroll it into MDM. So you have to pay for your own device. They'll basically own the management of it. And then they come back to their employees and says, well, you're not allowed to have, for instance, TikTok installed. And the employee says, well, it's my phone. Well, not really, because we manage it. So if you want to have TikTok, you have to remove the mobile device from the MDM, and then you can't do your job. So that's been a discussion here, is how much power should an employer have on a bring your own device thing, and that's actually a problem. If they want to manage everything on a device, they should actually buy that device and hand it over to the employee and say, this is your work tool, don't use it for anything else. But you can't have both. You can't have your employees basically buy the hardware and the employer manage it as it's their own. That doesn't work.
Does this sound like more of a security flinched reaction, though, to a certain extent, whereby, TikTok's turned up, all of a sudden there's a bit of concern over the level of data being transferred. Quite why there's not the same level of concern over Facebook, WhatsApp, and all the other various other ones, I'm not quite sure.
It was several years ago. I can vividly remember all the discussions we had about WhatsApp like 7 years ago. It was basically exactly the same thing.
Yeah, and YouTube and all these other apps, they all do very similar things. But there's this concern over TikTok. But my guess is that that's a knee-jerk reaction from the security team who went, no, because they don't really understand the fact that all those other apps are probably already on there.
Yeah, but which is okay if they own the device. But if it's a personal device, no, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, have you seen the similar things, Kevin?
Yeah, of course. It's quite a normal discussion you have with customers. So it's quite difficult. So that's why we normally go for the mobile application management scenario, because then we can just say, okay, we manage the data of our apps on your phone. Yeah, and the other things you do with your phone, that's up to the user. And then it is at least a quite easy discussion instead of managing the whole device.
But still, there's a catch that one could reach when there is a security case and you need to do device forensics.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then you are again in the same situation, basically. So I'm more and more coming into the just push out your devices to your people and let them have the separate one for the personal stuff, and not let everyone via their private phone access the company data, because it really depends, obviously, and if you have the money. But then comes 2FA. People have to use some second factor. You can't tell them use your private phone, because that's the same discussion as we had right away with Teams on the Norwegian devices. It's their device. If they don't want to install the Microsoft Authenticator app, you have to provide a different solution. Yeah, you can bring out OTPs and whatever, or you just provide them stupid mobile phone. They are not that expensive anymore.
Yeah, get them a Nokia 3330 or something, like one of the old ones that last about 7 years battery life, that sort of stuff. Get them something like that. It'd be great.
That would be cool.
Not many Teams messages coming up on it,
This
though.
is always a discussion, right? Because this is something that the bring your own disaster device thing is good on paper in many regards, right? I mean, pick up any device somewhere if you need it and get access via a secure method, right? So the idea behind it is good, but there's a lot of both regulatory and personal information kind of quagmires that you get into with this when you start commingling and mixing these things. And that's something that the bring your own device kind of way of thinking hasn't really addressed in a way. It's more of the access more than it's the management of it in a way.
But then that's so important to rely on consultancies who have that experience, because over time you know whom to ask, when to get the Workers' Council in, for example. I know I said the bad words now, but also a part of that, and the more experience you have, or as an MSP managing that stuff, the easier it gets for the company itself to rely on that, as with all the other services, right? But modern workplace is more than just the device management. I personally can't even think about working in an environment where I have to log in via VPN to anything all the time. Did you get some feedback from your customers where they feel that relief that I feel every day, basically?
Yeah, of course, because it's way more easier to get to work and make sure that you could do everything from any device wherever you would like to do it. So of course, it's way more easy, and I think the COVID pandemic also helped in this situation, because then suddenly all users needed to work at home, and then you need to do something instead of via VPN or whatever and get access to your environment. So that's also what we have seen that really helped with the modern workspace transition.
We're still what's the word, on the bench as to whether Microsoft caused the COVID pandemic just to sell more Office 365. You know? Again, every week. No, I'm only joking. Clearly joking. The other thing as well, though, is they've actually done an extremely good job of combining the two, because the 5, not even the 2. So we've got Office 365, which links into Virtual Desktop, which links into essentially OneDrive, Teams, SharePoint, everything else on those lines, which then links into the use of mobile phones and things of that nature, all with one cohesive control system. Is that fair, or is it still a little bit disparate? But it's still essentially one control system to do the whole lot, isn't it? I.e., you do it in Office 365's interface.
Yeah, it is. For instance, Azure Virtual Desktop is managed a bit different, but it doesn't matter. But at least everything from one central portal, and you could manage via that all the devices. Yeah.
That's quite impressive. I mean, to have dragged all that into one place.
Yeah,
and then add in the security part for all those managed devices also, and all the technical infrastructure behind that. It is definitely very impressive. And on the way to that state where we are at now, there were a lot of hiccups, but I think they're getting better and better. And also, Kevin, I don't know if you worked with that already, but even the endpoint management is getting better and better now, with desired state configuration basically pushed out via Intune on the devices. We're going into a more defined state, not so, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. It's getting more strict. I really like that push.
Yeah, exactly. It's getting more and more mature. So I think that's exactly what it is. And I don't see any scenario where we would like to move back to SSGM, for instance, because I think Intune is quite easy, getting quite mature. Yeah, that makes sense, of course, that it will stick.
It strikes me a bit like, and this is something Christian Mohn and I are more familiar with, the transition between having servers and having virtual servers is very similar to the way that we have desktops and modern workspace, in the fact that we used to manage every single desktop. There would be, groups of IT people managing their desktops, and that would be their sole job, would just be managing desktops. Those jobs, to all intents and purposes, have kind of gone, haven't they? They've transitioned to other things because they're not out there managing the desktops in the same way as they used to be.
No, not in the same way, but still the device needs to be managed. Because, for instance, if certain devices are not compliant, not able to actually reach the MyStreet data, then still you need an engineer to check the device and make sure that it is compliant again. So I think it is still a job. It's still relevant. We still have engineers in our company which are managing devices, managing desktops. But I think the job has changed to different things, making sure that you can manage it via the Azure portal, the Microsoft 365 portal, and that I think it is different, but still relevant at the moment.
Yeah, but it moves over to being fleet management more than device management.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah.
So it's kind of that's one of the things when we started virtualizing. We started discussing things like the difference between pets and cattle, right? So you look after your pets, you feed them, you kind of, and cattle is basically food production. So while they're still animals, there's a difference in how you approach them. And we used to be called server huggers back in the day when we kind of,
when you named everyone according to your favorite fantasy figure.
Exactly, right? So now it's automatically named. It gets rolled out based on a policy. It's production. It's not curating, right? So and the same goes for desktops as well, I guess. But touching on that, I mean, last time around we had Stina with us, who does a lot of work in secure environments, right, without internet access. And all of this is still, I guess, internet access based. Can you do anything with this kind of management in black sites without internet access, or is that still then SCCM and Citrix on-prem or Omnissa Horizon on-prem and stuff like that?
Yeah, of course, one of the downsides of a modern workspace in the cloud that you need an internet connection. And so that's, of course, what we're depending on. It's also something which I think is getting more and more relevant, of course, connectivity and that kind of things, because it will eventually get even bigger than it is today. And if you want to do things without the internet, then you're more up to Citrix on-premise or that kind of things. And so, of course, that's how it is.
Yeah, and that but certainly from what Stina was saying there, that's very difficult to achieve, because generally speaking, even if you're doing Citrix, unless you're isolating it and never updating it internally, because you wouldn't be able to update it because it's got no internet access. So everything stays sort of fixed.
As we discussed before, there are ways around that. but yeah, but that's a thing, right? Because everything now, and this is a general thing. It's not just a modern workspace thing. It's basically everything is connected to something somehow. Leaving those specialized environments in a difficult state, because it's hard to actually get newer applications, newer things running. While before we could do that pretty easily because everything wasn't interconnected to a cloud service. So there is a kind of a mismatch there right now that is hard to bridge. So I was kind of wondering if Azure.local or something like that would be a way to, in the future, perhaps do something like a one-way management into those kind of environments via gateway somehow or something like that. But
yeah, of course. So we see that Azure Local is getting more and more relevant to our customers as well. So Azure Local is the on-premise variant of Azure that you could just manage it and do it on your on-premise hardware. So of course that's helping. I think that's also something which Microsoft is using now for the Azure Virtual Desktop part. So I think it's a real risk for Citrix, because when this is real mature, then Citrix, it's getting more and more difficult for Citrix to have a lot of customers, I think. And so, of course, that's an option, but still, also in Azure Local, you need to have a connection to Azure to actually maintain the platform. So still, connectivity is important, but less important when you're using Azure Local.
So there's a difference between management traffic and actual application traffic inside of the virtual machine. So someone might define that, okay, we'll allow the management traffic, but we're not allowing any of our company data to actually leave our own data center. And that way you could kind of bridge the two things.
Yeah, of course. Then the infrastructure parts is managed. It can be done like that. But of course, there is no Azure Local variant of Microsoft 365. Maybe it will come, but I don't think so at the moment.
Nice. Okay, great. I've got to say, that's been a really interesting discussion, far more than I was expecting it to be, I will say. And it turns out that really, I suppose that modern workspace, cloud workspace, virtual, they're all variations on the same theme, but the same theme is just enabling people to be able to function outside of their own area. So thank you very much, Kevin. Cheers for your time today. It's been really entertaining. And thank you, Christians. I'll just call you Christians from this point forward. But thanks a lot. And thank you very much for joining in, everybody. Any comments, by all means, please put them in the section below. And if you've got any ideas for what you want us to talk about, then please just let us know. So thanks again. Cheers, everybody.